Okay, so in this video we're going to do 8.1 through 8.2 review, which is really just key characteristics about the parabola, which is that U-shaped graph. Some key features that we've been talking about are the intercepts. So the x-intercept is where our parabola touches the x-axis, and our left intercept, x-intercept, is also where it touches. So remember, we read it left to right, so left is to the left, and then right to the right. Now, vertex, it's the highest point or the lowest point. It's our bouncing point. It's where the graph changes direction. If you choose axis of symmetry, you can choose axis of symmetry anywhere on this blue dotted line. It's that vertical line that cuts the graph through the middle. Y-intercept is exactly what you see, where the graph touches the y-intercept. Now, maximum and minimum. Maximum is when you have a upside down graph. It's the y value of the vertex. So we call that the max. It's the highest point. And then if we have a parabola that is facing upright or concave up, we call that the min. It's a minimum point. So for this graph, we just have a maximum, and that would be the y of the vertex. For number 3 or slide 3, it's beneficial to know graphing up or down, we call that vertical. That's our k value. Left or right are horizontal, h for horizontal, and then our a value. Now what happens when the a becomes negative? The graph is reflected. So it's pointing downwards. Now, on the next graph, or the next page, I will talk more about the a value. It's the matching. Now, for a value, if the a is positive, we know that the graph is facing upward. If the a is negative, the graph is pointing downward. Now, what students are struggling with is when a is greater than 1, it's actually more narrow. You want to think it means wider, but it means it's getting closer and closer to y. Now, when a is between 0 and 1, that's when it looks wider. So I'm going to pick all the negative signs first. So I see a negative and I see a negative. So I know my graphs are going to be upside down. So I have this graph and I have this graph. Now, 0.25. That is between 0 and 1, so my graph is going to be wider. Negative makes my graph flip, reflect. 3 makes it skinnier or more narrow. Now these are positive. So this is going to be x squared because it's more narrow than my 3x squared. Actually, sorry. That is going to be more narrow. So that's why it's a 3. 3 makes it closer and closer to y. So if you look at these two graphs, my bottom one, my y equals x squared, is wider than my y equals 3x squared because the 3 made it more narrow, made it skinnier. Now for this part, I highly recommend you split it down the middle. Your vertex is 5, 2. Now it says which part is decreasing. The part that is going down is this part. So we care about the left. You always read your graph from left to right. So we always start at negative infinity all the way to the left. And where do I stop? Boom, I hit the wall. 5. So my interval is negative infinity to 5. Now think about slide number 6. You draw your wall again, straight down the middle, and you want to know which part is increasing. Well, my graph is moving up. Which part is moving up? My wall I'm starting with, and now I'm going to the right. So I'm starting at 5 this time, and I'm going all the way to positive infinity. Now for this part, we are going to start applying the parabola. A bridge is symmetrical. You know, engineers need to know where the middle point is, how high it's going to be off the water. Some of you missed this part right here. We told you the vertex was 251.5, 118. Now the axis of symmetry is what cuts the parabola, or the bridge in this case, down the middle. Now the equation of axis of symmetry is always x equals. What was my x value? 251.5. You have to make an equation. It's your x value. So let's translate that into this one. I'm going to switch my axis of symmetry. I'm going to cut it down the middle. I know it goes down the middle because that's the definition of it. What is my ordered pair here? My ordered pair is 6, 5. The reason why I went right 6, up 5. So then what's my equation of the axis of symmetry? X equals 6. Always the x value. Now when I actually just give you the equation, that 4 tells you that it's concave up because it's a positive. Now whenever you're dealing with the equation, you have to think opposite of h. So this was really a negative 2. Has to be the opposite, so h is really 2. When you're leaving the equation, the k is the same. So my k is 8. Now when you were learning how to plot a point, your x is always your left and right movement. Since my h is positive, I know I have to move right 2. My k movement, or my y movement, is up and down. Since my k is positive, I know I have to move up 8. So if you do that from the origin, if you go right 2, up 8, my vertex is going to be 2, 8. Now for this one, it's either or. You explain your reasoning, or you could draw a picture. Not draw a picture, but, well, you could do that technically too. Or you could just show your work. So it says vertically up 4 units. So how I would show my work, draw the up, draw the 4. So then I know my k is 4. Notice that it says nothing about my h. So I don't have a horizontal movement, so I call that 0. Now if I plug this in, up means positive 4. X minus a 0 is just x. Now notice, I don't need those grouping symbols anymore. The reason I don't need them is because it's just x by itself. So then we have y equals x squared plus 4. So you can show your work that way. If you wanted to explain your reasoning, you could say vertically up means a positive k. I know k is at the end of my equation, so that's why I chose y equals x squared plus 4. Something along those lines if you wanted to write it as well. Okay, so it says horizontally, so h, left 7, so that's negative 7. It does not say anything about my vertical movement, so it's going to be k equals 0. So then I'm just going to plug it in. It's x minus our h value plus 0. We don't need that plus 0. And then minus a negative gets us a plus 7. So whenever you leave the equation or enter the equation, it's the opposite. So left 7 is really a plus 7 inside the parentheses. And you could explain that in your sentence as well. All right, vertically down, same idea. K is down 2, so that means negative 2. I know my H is 0. So minus 0 goes away. So then I'm just left with x squared because I no longer need the grouping symbols. So then it's just minus 2. So my choice would be here. So when you don't have a horizontal movement, notice that there's no parentheses because we're not grouping the horizontal movement because there is none. And now the same with this. It's horizontally right 5. My H is right 5, which means it's a positive 5. It says nothing about my vertical movement, so that's 0. So if you plug that in, it's always x minus h squared plus k. So we have a minus, and then we already have a positive. Now there's two things that look silly. This plus 0 we don't need, and then this minus a positive. Minus a positive just becomes a minus. So then, since we are talking about horizontal, we need to keep the parentheses. And then, of course, fill out the reflection part when you're done.